but we here at the Anti-Gravity Room try to avoid everything having to do with Richard Gere. What we do have is James Robinson, Charles Vess, and Neil Gaiman. I'm Nick here at the Night Gallery Cafe in New York City.
Oh, I'm Jamie in LA working on my script for Robin Hood, Prince of Tides. I always thought Streisand and Costner were meant to work together.
I'm Phil in Toronto, and if you haven't already guessed the theme of the show, we've brought in an expert to fill you in.
I'm Jeff Smith, the creator of Bone, and I'm standing about 2 feet from Phil in Toronto. Fantasy is what this week's show is all about here on the Anti-Gravity Room.
Did you know that there are things going on in your head that you aren't consciously aware of? It's called your subconscious mind. Want to know how it works? Ashna talked to Tim Egan, the subconscious mind behind the subconscious.
Oh, I get it. You're telling the audience with your subconscious mind. Deep. This show must have good writers.
Nope.
Hi. My name's Tim Egan. I do a comic strip called Subconscious Comics. All the characters are in a human head. Help me, please.
Where did the idea of subconscious comics come from?
You'd be surprised how many people ask me that question. I wish I knew. A little room inside my head, perhaps. I actually got the idea for the room inside the head from that old Anderson ad back in the 60s. At least the idea was introduced to me of the world of the subconscious, or the internal world. And then I found that I was able to wake myself up from a dream if I realized I was in one, and say, okay, I'm out of here, and open the eyes, and suddenly I'm back in the real world. And that kind of was a realization that there was a door between the two. They weren't just two separate rooms without any connection. And I kind of got to thinking, well, maybe I can get back into the room without going to sleep. And I've been trying to do that with Subconscious Comics for a long time now.
Why did you decide to dive into the subconscious mind of a regular guy and not a woman?
It's been a long time since I've been a woman, and I just feel more comfortable with the guy thing. And I am a guy now, so it's not about me. The strip really isn't about me. I deny that it's about me. And if you could prove that it's about me, that's fine, but it's not. It's about somebody else. So I just don't want to talk about that, okay?
Do you think human beings are basically ridiculous?
Yes. I think it's because they're naked, and they take themselves so seriously. I mean, you don't see a bear taking himself seriously, or any other animal. But human beings are trying to pull something off, and at the same time being naked, and it's just not working. And then you add to that the fact that there's this big thing, protuberance, sticking out of the middle of their face. It's just too ridiculous, and I have to point it out. It's my job to point it out.
In addition to working on Sandman, Charles Vess has been doing his own fantasy projects for quite some time now, ballads and sagas. It sounded pretty cool when he explained it to me, except for that whole clone thing.
My name is Charles Vess. I've been a freelance comic artist since about 1976, and so I guess I'm celebrating my 20th year here doing this stuff. I've done work for Marvel and DC Comics. Right now I'm self-publishing a book called The Book of Ballads and Sagas. I've always enjoyed fantasy because I enjoy organic shapes, forms, natural things, trees. I don't really enjoy drawing modern buildings, cars, spaceships. The building we're in right now is full of too many straight edges for me, and I'd have to use a ruler way too often. Stardust is a book project that Neil Gaiman and I have been trying to work on for quite a number of years. We're getting up to speed next month. It's supposed to premiere next year at San Diego. It's a fairy tale book written for adults and people of all ages, actually. It'll have about 200 paintings and 40,000 words. and it'll be much like a coffee table book that anyone can pick up and enjoy. It won't be a comic book, but it'll have words on every page and pictures on every page, just no panels or the funny little word balloons. Some of the artists that are influences of mine are dead. They're Arthur Rackham, who's a British fantasy painter, Howard Pyle, who's an American, N.C. Wyeth. Then there are the people that I started looking at when I was growing up, Frank Frazetta, Roy Krinkle, and then people that are a little bit older than my peers, Michael Kaluta and Bernie Wrightson, that were big influences that are now my friends. So, fantasy is Art Nouveau and science fiction is Art Deco, and I've always collected Art Nouveau books and never been really interested in the Art Deco.
This just in. Crossover news. Grant Morrison is the writer behind the 64-page JLA Wildcats book out this summer. Sirius Entertainment has added Reality Check to its lineup of creator-owned titles. Demon Storm is the newest entry from Caliber Comics. #1 is available in January with a Todd McFarlane cover.
Okay, there's everybody. Okay, and we're at Microsoft with Shannon Smith, and she's explaining Hellbender to me, but I can't see. Is that sky or is that snow?
You're flying actually on the 7th planet. There's 8 different planets within the coalition of planets within Microsoft Hellbender, and this one is a snow-covered planet, the 7th planet in the series. It's an action game because there's a lot of shooting involved and a lot of strategy involved with it.
A lot of control involved.
Definitely. You need to be used to playing a lot of these games to be comfortable with it right away.
It looks like a really amazing flight simulator. It's just that it's too much for this mind to take at once. But seriously, what do you think of the game? Like, give it a rating.
This one's really great because of the technological advances. One, you get multiplayer capabilities with Hellbender, so you can play it over the internet against 4 other players. One of the other great things is it takes advantage of something called direct 3D technology, so the graphics on it are really
Very rich.
Yeah, and it's really 3D, well graphics. It's something you could never get on a home PC before, and this really shows it off well.
Out of 5?
You want me to rate it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll give it a 5, but you have to rate it too. I'm going to be a little biased because it's a Microsoft product.
I'm gonna agree with Shannon about 5 because you know what? It does look like there's so much to learn, but once you get it, it'd be a lot of fun.
The AGR is the first to answer a question that has plagued people around the globe. What do monarchies do in their spare time? The answer, from a rock band, of course.
As far as comic books goes, I would say that we've been influenced, perhaps most of all, by I have no idea what influenced by the way. Sally Forth is also very important. Kathy was a big influence. That's a big influence on me. Family, what is it, circus? We love Family Circus. I love when in Family Circus there's like some ghosts going around doing this. What the is a ghost? Family
to burst, well, that found me right. Why don't you ride? I said, don't get on that.
So if any of your viewers out there wish to invite us to do some wild rock parties, we should be glad to attend.
You know, Nick, Mad Monkey Press is the latest addition to the pantheon of comic book companies in North America.
And since I have an intense fear of all nice people, Phil will be conducting all of the interviews occurring in Canada. I've always depended on the kindness of Phil.
Okay, I'm here with Kaja from Mad Monkey Press. Kaja, how you doing?
Good, Phil.
Kaja, what is Magician's Village?
It's basically a story of a 10-year-old boy who lives in New York and discovers a hidden gateway to a secret village inside Central Park.
Where did the story come from?
Well, I grew up in New York, in Manhattan, and I spent a lot of time in Central Park. So it's my experiences, my friends' experiences, and just ideas I've had since I was about 6 or 7 years old.
Now, there seems to be a lot of classical children's story ideas in Magician's Village. Where did you draw your influences from?
Well, I think mainly what I grew up with, like the Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, Brothers Grimm, movies, children's book illustrators like Arthur Rackham, Edmund Dulac, Kay Nielsen. I draw on all those ideas.
Who are some of the characters in Magician's Village?
Okay, well, we have Timothy, who's the 10-year-old dreamer and the star of the series. And he's an artist, someone who's very lonely. He has no father, and he was raised by his mother, who's sort of a very high-powered New York attorney, always off somewhere doing work, so he's raised by servants. We have Max, who's a 6-foot mouse, dressed like a mime, who's very roguish. He's the artful dodger. We have Sebastian, who's a hot dog vendor, who's really like a homeless man who's far more than he seems. He's really Timothy's protector and a very powerful magician. We have Daedalus, who's sort of the evil villain of the piece. And then we'll be introducing the Goblin King, who's the most frightening character of all in Magician's Village.
What are you currently working on?
Well, other than Magician's Village, we have Singapore Sam, which is sort of a tribute to 40s style Sunday funnies. We have The Black Raven, which is like a techno-urban hero. We have Witch's Brew, which is a historical time-traveling mystery. Dark Town, which is a man trapped in a coma, 13 hours to get out, and so on. I mean, you name it, we're working on it.
How would you define fantasy, and what do you think its appeal is?
Well, fantasy, for me at least, is something that is not bound by the laws of science. It's far more ethereal. It challenges your imagination.
Now, is there a fantasy story you've always wanted to write that you haven't gone around to doing yet?
No, I think Magician's Village is it. I mean, it's contemporary, it takes place in the real world and simultaneously in sort of a fantasy land. I've always found that really interesting. You know, I mean, this is going to go on for a while, and this encompasses everything I like to do.
Kaja, very cool. From Mad Monkey
Cheers.
Press, thanks for talking to us.
All right.
Leave It to Chance, Bone, Comicopia, Bone, and the Mailbag, and Bone. When we return, Bone.
Since we're talking about fantasy, let's go to a comic collector's fantasy. It's comic books on CD-ROM. DC is putting out a bunch of them. We'll be checking out Superboy and Aquaman. They're awesome. Best of both worlds. Okay, you're greeted with a nice welcome screen. Very visual, very cool. You get to select which page you want to start on, but since we haven't read this before, I think we should go to page 1. So you launch the comic. You can do autoplay if you want, but I like to be in control. I don't know about you. The art on this is very cool. It says very traditional style art since I think it was taken from an old comic book. The only thing that sucks about that is it's the old Superboy. In this story, he's like fighting against aliens, like 2 different varieties of aliens. You got 2 aliens in one comic, folks. The cool part about this program is you've got a great help screen, okay? When you start out the comic, you can check this out, see what different kinds of features it has. You can make Superboy's cape do a little thing. You get the reveal screen where, oh, I didn't know that was there. And then full motion video, you know, you got QuickTime video going on, PC and Mac action. It makes it a whole animation experience. And then, of course, you got the Superboy transformation. Need I say more? Okay, the Aquaman CD-ROM I liked a lot more. First off, the opening is a lot more visual. It's pretty much the same features, but it's a lot better laid out. You launch the comic, and, you know, it's not some preppy Superboy kid. It's a cool Aquaman guy, and I love Aquaman. Now, this is before the hook, so he's not awesome, but he still could kick Superboy's butt any day. Superboy and Aquaman, comics on CD-ROM. It's a cool idea, but, you know, there's loads of room for improvement, so I gotta give it 3 out of 5 Gs on the anti-gravity scale, just because I know it could be so much better. Well, that's it for Comicopia this week. See you next time. To find the comic store in your neighborhood, call Comic Locator.
Neil Gaiman. Need I say more?
Okay, folks, we're here with the man himself, Neil Gaiman. Neil, you're most well known, I think, for Sandman, so can you tell us a little about Sandman?
Sure. Sandman's a comic about dreaming. It's a horror comic, sometimes a fantasy comic, and it's a story about stories, why we need them, what they are, why they matter.
Were you surprised when you got the World Fantasy Award?
Describing me as being surprised is like describing, you know, the explosion at Hiroshima as a little noisy. I was completely and utterly gobsmacked Oh, it was amazing. It was the first time and the only time that a comic has ever won a literary award, an award for prose.
Tell us a little about the characters of Sandman.
Well, Sandman is in many ways a family story. For reasons of coincidence, their names all begin with D. You've got his elder brother, Destiny, and you have Death. Then you've got the Sandman himself, who is Dream, and he is the incarnation of dreaming. He's the person who, when you go to sleep each night, you go and live in his world. Then you have the twins, who are Desire, who doesn't actually have a sex, or has a large number of sexes, depending on which way you look at it, and Despair, who is very squat and naked and lives in a world filled with mist and mirrors. And then you have the youngest, who's my favorite, who is Delirium. And Delirium is very crazy, very strange, and manages to say occasionally very, very sane and sensible things.
Death is like a 16-year-old girl. Why do you think she's so popular?
When I created the character of Death, I wanted to create the kind of Death that I would like to meet. I'd like a girl. I'd like somebody sensible. I'd like somebody nice. I don't want a skeleton. I don't want somebody pale and Byronic and weird. I just want somebody nice. And I think Death is about the only nice character in comics. There are very, very few of them.
Now, all your characters and stories seem to have kind of a dark mood. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but are you an angry guy?
Writers get to be nice, because we get to do all the terrible things that we ever want on the page, which is marvelous. I mean, that's where it spills out. You know, I get to spill as much blood as I want, and I know how to hide the bodies. You're lucky, because if I wasn't a writer, you'd be dead right now.
Hey.
Leave It to Chance is the story of a young girl who wants to be her father's apprentice and protect their town from other worldly dangers. Kind of like Leave It to Beaver, but with more demons and stuff.
I see what you mean about the writer now.
I'm James Robinson. I'm a comics writer, and my works include Legends of the Dark Knight, Grendel Tales, and the monthly Starman comic for DC.
Hi, my name is Paul Smith. I'm a comics artist, and I've worked on the X-Men and Doctor Strange and Mike Mahogany, amongst others, and I'm now working with James Robinson on Leave It to Chance.
Well, Chance was originally my idea. I wanted to do something that appealed to a female demographic whilst also being exciting enough for everybody. I think Chance is a young girl who's trying to prove herself to the world and to her father. Her city is a fantastic city of monsters and horror. Her father is the investigator of those monsters and that horror, and she's determined to prove that she's worthy to continue in his footsteps.
James has a habit of using cities as a living part of the story, and we have so much to establish in Devil's Echo that setting alone could keep us busy for years.
The fantastic characters that I chose to populate the world really are dictated by my love of horror movies and fantasy and the stuff that I grew up enjoying. So expect to see monsters, mummies, vampires. In some ways, I think her struggle mirrors the struggle that a lot of girls and a lot of women have in this world, trying to prove themselves, trying to find a niche. And what that gives her, I think, is strength and a spirit that appeals to everybody. I think she's a brave, exciting character.
Up next, Phil and Jeff read some mail while Jamie single-handedly gets world peace and ends famine by starting her own 900 chat line. Do we have a number for that?
The anti-gravity room gets a lot of mail, most of it about Bone.
Mike Toes writes, I saw on one of your shows a segment on remote-control cars that crush each other. Well, Mike, we took this letter to the boys in the lab, and all we could come up with was a segment we did on Robot Wars. That's where a bunch of remote-control vehicles run around and crush each other. We have no recollection of remote-control cars being on the show. However, maybe you're watching the Anti-Gravy Room. They specialize in remote-control vehicles and beef and mushroom gravy. Too much bone.
Sanka, as in the refreshing decaffeinated coffee, asks, can you guys do more gothic horror comics? More of the gory type? Well, Sanka, you're in luck, because I just launched my own line of comics.
Yeah, it's gonna be called Guy Who Gets His Throat Ripped Out Monthly.
Be sure to check out the first issue.
You can write to us at the Anti-Gravity Room with Evan Dorkin.
That was pretty cool. Not as cool as Bone, though.
Need we mention any more comics? Bone is the end-all and be-all of comics.
Yeah, Alan Moore. Yeah.
Yeah, Garth Ennis, whatever.
Yeah, Evan Dorkin.
I'm with you guys. I've already started construction on this temple to Jeff Smith and his divine creation, Bone. Ritual sacrifice begins at 9 p.m. sharp. Don't be late.
I could really get into more of this TV stuff, Phil. See you next time on the Anti-Gravity Room.
They've crash-landed on Earth and moved in next door. Now one cop must expose the truth behind an extraterrestrial conspiracy. James Caan and Mandy Patinkin star in Alien Nation, the motion picture. Tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, Sci-Fi Saturday. Now, stay tuned for The Odyssey. Sci-Fi Channel next.